Hi everyone, welcome to the Springboard webinar. We're going to do some Q&A with our awesome team of panelists here. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes before we get started just so people have time to actually jump onto the webinar. So y'all can hang tight and we will kick it off here in just a minute. While you're waiting, you can kind of become familiar with the whole Zoom platform. So you should be able to see on your screen the option to chat. So that's a place where you can tell us where you're tuning in from. That's always cool to see. We have people kind of worldwide joining the data science career track. It's also a good place to ask questions. The other option, if you have questions, is that you can ask them directly to myself, as well as the rest of the panelists can also see them. They're in the Q&A section. So if you click there, you could ask a question. We'll try to get to every question. There are going to be a lot of them, so we might not get to everybody's, but it's good to ask them in the Q&A so I can follow up with you after. Also with the Q&A, depending on what the question is, I might answer it over text if it's a quick question that can be answered. So just to give you a little bit more familiarity there. So to make sure we have plenty of time for those questions, I'm going to get it started. I'm Katie. I'm the admissions manager here for the data science courses at Springboard. You've probably seen a lot of emails from me already, but I'm kind of your point of contact for any logistical questions around the course, as well as the entire application process. So as a reminder, the application deadline for the for the September cohort is August 20th, which is next Monday, or this coming Monday. So that is a little bit about me. And as a reminder about the format of this session, before I have our panelists introduce themselves, it is a Q&A, so it's entirely based on your questions. So definitely ask any and every question that you have. That's going to be kind of the best way to make sure that this session is as beneficial to you as possible. So panelists, I would love if you guys could introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about how you're related to Springboard.
Hey y'all, I'm Ryan Harder. I'm a staff data scientist with Mozilla. I mentor with the Springboard platform. Is that good?
I can go next. I am Janet Mata. I'm one of the career coaches here at Springboard. I work with a variety of different types of students in our various programs, and I help oversee the whole coaching program as well. So it's a pleasure. I love working for Springboard and career coaching our students.
All right, I can go next. So my name is Lita. Hi, everyone. I was a Springboard student. I joined in September last year and I graduated in January. My background is in aerospace engineering, but now I'm a data scientist.
Awesome. And Ryan and Shalita, could you guys both talk a little bit about how you ended up involved with Springboard and sort of why you chose Springboard, what attracted you to it?
Yeah, sure. So like I mentioned, I was in the aerospace industry before I became a data scientist. And as I was at my old job, I started gaining interest in data science and just been doing a lot of research on it. And sorry, my cat, just not the right time. But so I just became more and more interested in it. And then based on my research, Springboard had a really good rating, and I got into contact with, I want to say Nicole. I'm not sure what her name was, but she really got me really interested in the course because it's like, first is completely online, so I can do this on the side of my actual job. And yeah, like it's good rating, also good price, and also all online, so it's like it fits all I need.
Awesome. And Ryan, do you want to speak a little to kind of why you chose to become a mentor with Springboard?
Sure. So I've been in data science for a while now, and I wanted to start getting involved with the community, start getting a feel for what newer data scientists are dealing with and what type of questions they have and what problems they're facing, with the goal of maybe eventually clearing up some of the confusion around what data science is and addressing some of the general confusion in the industry.
Awesome, thanks for providing that context. So I think kind of the first big question that we like to talk through are sort of what skills do you need to be successful as an entry-level data scientist, and how does the Springboard course teach you those skills?
So I can talk about this a little bit. So I've done a lot of interviewing for data science positions. I've been trying to really pin down on what's important to making someone successful in data science. I've summarized this before as like a mix of communication, statistical skills, data intuition, and technical skills like programming. Having a really deep specialty in one of those areas, being, for example, really good at communicating technical concepts, is important. And then having some satisfactory skill in each of the other vectors is also important. So it's a mixture of having a broad enough base to be able to address a pretty wide array of demands, and then having some depth to be able to hack through more difficult problems.
I can go next. I think to me is the ability to constantly learn new things. Like I mentioned, I had a different background, and then like after 3 or 4 months of Springboard, I think it's really, really important that you're able to adapt to new technologies and new concepts quickly and efficiently. And I think just in general, even though you move up into like becoming like a senior data scientist, I feel like in data science field in general, it's still relatively new. So there's always new technologies, new tools, new packages, new platforms. So I think the ability to be able to, like just like pick up on new things and just like learn quickly is very, very important.
Yeah, we're still figuring out the tool chain, the set of tools that does everything. We haven't figured it out yet. So being able to roll with those punches is important.
Awesome. And could you guys speak to, Janet, you can weigh in here as well, the value of the capstone projects? There are 2 capstone projects in the curriculum, so maybe the value of those, and Ryan and Shalita, if you want to talk about like
Sure.
either the capstone you did or the capstones you've seen from your mentees.
Yeah, so the capstones are really nice. So the 2 major benefits that I see are that they keep you accountable. So they actually make you work through an entire problem, and they provide some type of portfolio when you're applying to jobs in the future. So the first one, accountability. I've mentioned data intuition, and that's something that I've found people can only learn by working with real world data and like stubbing their toe in a bunch of different problems and figuring out that these are the things I should be looking for. These are the things I don't need to pay attention to. So working through a capstone with real world data helps you build all those skills and keeps you accountable for finishing something. The other part, what did I say? A portfolio. So building a portfolio is important because it shows your first stage of interviewers that you have some competency in data science, right? So it just associates you with data science work, and they can get a feel for what tools you use, whether or not you're a fit for their particular set of needs.
I can also add to this. So the capstone project is actually what got me a job. So I can speak more highly of those projects. And I think what I really, really liked about the program is that they pair you up with a mentor. And before you even start your project, you talk to your mentor. And since your mentor is like the industry expert, right? They know exactly what's going on in the industry, what's the hot topic, what's the actual problems that people are still trying to solve in the industry. I was really lucky to have a very, very smart mentor. And I brainstormed my project idea with my mentor and came up with, I think is a really good project. And I posted it on Medium, and literally like 2 weeks after I got hired. So
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit more about what that capstone project was?
Yeah, sure. So the capstone project was on forecasting using machine learning models. At the time, I did like cryptocurrency price forecasting. It was just like for fun, like it's a hot topic. So what I did was I performed regression onto the like the different coin price. And in addition to using just the coin data, I used other external data, for example, like Google search frequency over time, or subreddit subscription over time. So it's just like like combining different sources of data and perform regression and machine learning onto my model to try to predict like the best the most accurate price of the cryptocurrency. But yeah.
Very cool. And can you guys speak a little bit to sort of what gaps you think currently exist in the industry within data science in general, and sort of what like new data scientists could potentially be filling with those gaps?
I can go. So now I'm working with Microsoft Finance team, and what we do is we produce forecasts for different like Microsoft organizations, for example, like revenue, headcount, cost, whatsoever. And we're a relatively new organization. We're trying to use machine learning to forecast their costs or whatever. And because we're new and originally people spend a lot of time and money to generate forecasts manually. And when we produce numbers from machine learning, are like some not some, but most finance managers would really question our numbers. They would be like, oh, so if I say, okay, well, the machine learning model tell you that this month you're gonna like revenue is gonna drop, so they're gonna ask you why, like why is it this number? And since it's because it's machine learning, there's some black box aspect to it that you sometimes can't really explain, and I think the industry as a whole is struggling to kind of make the machine learning models becomes more transparent to the users, and just be able to like gain credibility, be able to like explain your number. Yeah, so I think that's one thing that we're all struggling with.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about stuff that we've seen at Mozilla. One of the things that we deal with is collecting data while still maintaining user privacy, and dealing with the idea of who owns the data and how do you respectfully handle the data. And it's something that it seems like a lot of data scientists haven't thought about before. So having some idea of data privacy and that type of idea would be useful. I'd be impressed if I saw that coming into a pipeline.
Awesome. One other question that we got is speaking a little bit about R versus Python. We get this question a lot. So can you guys speak to kind of, is there an industry preference between one or the other?
I wouldn't say that there's an industry preference. I'm not sure that there's any agreement on which one's better. It depends on the type of team that you're working with. I've been at shops that mostly use R and mostly use Python. The best way I've seen to characterize the difference is that Python is a programming language maintained by computer scientists, while R is a programming language maintained by statisticians. So it kind of changes what you can do easily. If you start with Python, you'll probably have a better base in programming skills, right? So the technical skills of building large systems and moving a lot of data. If you're working in R, it can be a lot easier to produce models quickly, but your analyses might not scale as efficiently. I usually recommend Python to folks who are trying to learn how to program for the first time.
I totally agree. So at Microsoft, we have a baseline package and we used to use R. and we recently just moved to Python, and it's just like way easier to scale, and people just like love it way more. And yeah, I agree with Brian. But also R has some other functionalities that Python don't. So for example, with like ARIMA, you don't really have the auto like ARIMA, which like is very important when you try to perform real like statistical analysis on it. But I feel like that's there's pros and cons. So
Definitely. And switching gears a little bit. So we got a question about that most data science job postings require a PhD, and how does Springboard help to overcome this? And I want to piggyback off of that with another question we got, which is about, can you talk to the difference, like how do I pick the title? Like what do the different titles mean? What's the difference between a data scientist and a data analyst? So would love your thoughts on kind of how to navigate all these different titlings, as well as does it require a PhD to be a data scientist?
So I can kind of speak to the PhD level thing. Most of the job descriptions I've seen usually poke around like master's level, unless you're working in the finance industry as like a research scientist, and there they often call that data science. And I've found a lot of PhD postings there. Like Lita mentioned earlier, this is a very new industry, so I think a lot of the people who are hiring data scientists don't know what they need yet. And in general, I have not found that folks are writing consistent job titles. So if you see a lot of job postings that say PhD, it might be that they need a PhD. It might not be. I have a bachelor's, so I'm one of the few people that I worked with at a few previous gigs that didn't have some type of master's or advanced degree, and that's been working out for me. I think the most important thing when I'm hiring is some experience working with data. That's the data intuition, and then having enough skills in like statistics and communication to be able to accurately convey this information. And that's difficult but possible to evaluate in an interview without having to rely on a degree. I don't want to bogart this. Is there anything that you want to talk about?
yeah, I don't have a master and I don't have a PhD, and my bachelor is in mechanical engineering. So it's totally unrelated. I only have I guess the only credit I have is Springboard certificate, right? But I really don't believe in like taking the job qualification too literally. I think if you really think that you can do the job, you should be able to do the job. You should be able to convey, you should be able to convince the hiring manager that you can do this. So yeah.
There is some complexity with getting past the first stage of the interview process, the filtering, when they have a stack of resumes on a desk and they need to like get rid of half of them. And a portfolio does come in super handy right there. Having some writing about data science helps a lot too.
Right, yeah, that's exactly how I got my job. So yeah, just like be able to, work on projects that are interesting to you, that is like hot, that solve the problem that is currently going on in the industry, and write about it. And yeah, like I think that's important.
I can speak to this one a little bit too. There are positions that require a PhD, and that's just going to be a fact of life. It depends on the company, but I don't think that it's definitely not the majority from what I've seen. And it shouldn't be a hurdle to being able to transition into the field based on what these guys are talking about. I would second that as well. Your experience matters a lot, even more than your degree, depending on though how the employer will screen for the job. So sometimes they'll screen on education. We can't always overcome that, but when they are more interested in experience, then our students can excel no matter what degree that they have. We also really focus from the career side on networking. So building relationships is really, really important to your job search process, and not just submitting applications online and kind of getting stuck in that black hole of resumes. So we advise students take a really unconventional approach to their job search in order to help be successful.
Awesome. And then I think we've gotten to try and summarize all these different ones, people are talking about kind of their backgrounds. So whether that's a PhD in something that isn't related to data science, so, you know, biology, or another person who has a PhD in English. Can you speak to just kind of how, like, do you need a particular background in order to be successful in data science? Or is there a way to leverage these different backgrounds to make this pivot? How could they maybe like be beneficial as you do make that pivot?
A lot of the backgrounds that I've seen from people who have successfully transitioned from other careers have often been analytical in nature. So like physics, economics, psychology, which has a lot of statistics involved. That tends to help a lot because you have some basic understanding of like statistics and how you can build models or like how to reason around numbers. Yeah, I think that's the most I can add there.
I think so. I can speak to my background, I guess. So like my background was in engineering, and I think like transferring from engineering to data science was maybe a little more seamless than others. But I think like the most important takeaway from engineering is, you know, like the analytical thinking, problem solving skills, like the ability to be able to look at numbers and like be able to understand it, like know what stories it's telling, and, you know, just like analytically interpreting the information you're looking at. So I think that's very important in data science too.
Awesome. I think one other question is like even the ones that you mentioned, Ryan, are kind of more on the hard sciences side of things, except for maybe psychology. Is there a room for someone with more of a soft sciences or humanities background to make a transition into data science?
I think probably. I'm speaking empirically here. I'm looking at folks that I've seen that have tried to make the transition and have succeeded. I haven't seen much. I haven't seen many folks moving from, like, for example, literature into data science. It's just I would have a hard time saying whether or not it's empirically possible. I think it's totally reasonable, especially if they focused in some form of communication, right? Like presenting ideas cohesively. There's really just a ton of writing involved with data science because you need to be able to broadcast your ideas to a lot of different backgrounds, and writing really helps with that. It's reasonable to believe there would be. I don't have any evidence that shows that directly.
I can add more to that. I feel like honestly, the most important thing, the most important qualification you need as a data scientist is the ability to learn new things, right? So it doesn't really matter what your background is, like your history shouldn't learn the future. So like I feel like if you can learn quickly, you can pick up different concepts, and you actually truly enjoy data science, then why not? Like that shouldn't, like your background should really not stop you from becoming who you actually want to be, you know? So yeah, just like if learn quickly, and I think you will do very well in data science.
I can add to that a little bit. We have had students come from soft sciences backgrounds or social science or no science at all, like more humanities backgrounds. I will say it's a much harder search. Employers really want to see evidence of technical skills. So the Springboard will help you develop those technical skills, absolutely, but that's when your capstone projects become really, really critical. So we often advise that students without a technical background do a lot of extra projects when they can, to really demonstrate that they have that technical expertise, because employers will be looking for demonstrated experience to perform as a data scientist. So it's not impossible, but it may require some extra work on your part to kind of make up for that potential gap.
Awesome. Can you guys talk a little bit about how deep learning is transforming the field of data science?
Yeah, so I think I might be a little contrary to the way the question's asked. Deep learning is really interesting when you have a ton of data, like YouTube and Google scale. Most data science that I see going on today doesn't involve heavy machine learning like that. And I think this is a little overhyped in the literature around data science because it's new and interesting, so it's the cutting edge, and that's what researchers are talking about. But I'd say 98% of the value that's delivered from data science isn't coming from a deep learning or a very, very technical machine learning model like that. I've seen a lot more value come from more simple models that are interpretable, like logistic regression, where you can figure out when you can figure out what's going on inside of the model. Deep learning is great. It's very difficult to evaluate what's going on, and that can lead to a bunch of different problems.
Awesome. And to the other part of that question, which was how much emphasis is given to it in the program. So we have the option to specialize, was launched in April. So at this point, you can now pick one of 3 specializations when you get to the second half of the course. So with deep learning, a generalist track that focuses more on general machine learning and natural language processing. So the amount of emphasis that's given in the program is kind of what you make of it. If you choose to focus in on machine learning, then you would get to if you choose to focus on deep learning, you get to do an entire capstone project that's built on deep learning. And I think that from what I've heard, that's something that you'll definitely evaluate with your mentor, so you don't have to know off the bat. And you could also figure out deep learning especially requires a little bit more of a math-heavy background. So your mentor will be a great resource there to make sure you're not getting in too over your head as far as deep learning is concerned. I think another question that we got is it necessary, so this actually goes to that point, is it necessary to understand complex math behind machine learning and deep learning, or is just intuition sufficient?
I'll start on that one. So intuition is important. Intuition isn't going to carry you all the way. So having some background in statistics will be useful. I don't think that you need to understand complex mathematics. And I don't think that a background in complex mathematics would even necessarily give you a good head start for data science, right? Like you're still going to need to work with data until you build that intuition before you could be hireable, before you're like successful in the industry. That's my read.
Awesome. And kind of to sort of piggybacking off of this, as far as when you're looking to start the course, what can a student do to be better prepared to hit the ground running with the course? Is there sort of pre-work that you would recommend that they do in Python or in statistics prior to starting the course that might set them up for more success? Just generally any advice that you have there.
Having some background in like programming would be great. Leader, you're probably better suited to answer this one.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, I think someone who is motivated and, you know, like just like, because it's all online, right? It's very easy to just be like, okay, well, I'm tired at work today, so I deserve some break. So what I did was that I like set up my own pace, you know, like, okay, so I want to finish this in 3 or 4 months. How much do I have to get through every week and stick to your goal? I think that's one very important thing about online courses. And yeah, like Ryan mentioned, some statistical and programming background would be very helpful too.
Also, having some idea about what you want your day to look like when you're working, I think would be really useful for your first meeting with a mentor, because it'll help you dig into like what type of a position you're looking for, data engineer, data analyst, that type of thing.
Yeah, and I also found the career aspect of the curriculum to be very, very helpful, because it gets you start very early. I remember first week it tells you to like update your LinkedIn and like tell you about every important things about like LinkedIn and job search and what's not. So I think doing that while you're doing your actual curriculum is really, really helpful. And like just, yeah.
Awesome. And Janet, can you speak a little bit to kind of what that job search can look like, what the different paths a student could take when they get into the course?
Yeah, absolutely. So it very much depends on your background that you have when you come into the course, kind of what job titles might be best suited for you as you do your search through the course. But some really common, like 3 really common pathways that we see with students are going into a data analyst role. So that would be really typical of a student who maybe doesn't have a lot of experience yet working with data or in data analysis, more of an entry-level position. It's a good stepping stone potentially into a data science position later on, or it can be a role that will give you some exposure to being able to do data science that you can leverage then later to make a change in your career. So that's one really common pathway that we see for our students. The other is a really traditional data scientist role, so a mid-level data science type position at a really wide variety of companies. And that would be really well suited for somebody who's coming in with some technical background, maybe a previous software developer or somebody who's done data analytics in some industry before, who's ready to kind of take that next step with the help of the curriculum. And then the third pathway that we often see as career coaches would be data engineering. So folks, most commonly folks who've done software development or engineering in the past, this could be a really great fit in terms of a career pathway for you because it can leverage your technical engineering background in addition to your knowledge of data science. And then Lita is absolutely correct. We get you started really, really early on things like LinkedIn and the right mindset to conduct your job search. And then the coaches will meet regularly with you throughout the curriculum and then also in the 6 months after you finish the curriculum to make sure that your job search is going well, that you have the right strategy for you, that you're applying all the curriculum material around your job search and career path in the best way for you and kind of help you really make those steps forward.
Awesome. And I think just diving a little bit more into the student experience with the curriculum itself, can you guys all speak to what the time commitment is like and, like your experience with, what did you do? Or did you ever struggle and what did you do to kind of overcome that? And Janet and Ryan, how you guys help students who it seems like this, it is a rigorous course. So if you've seen students run into walls before and kind of how you help them, what advice you have for them to overcome those?
So from my experience, at first I did Springboard while I was still working. I did that for about a month, and a month in, I feel like I learned enough curriculum to actually know if I actually like this, I want to actually do this or not. And I decided, yeah, this is actually what I want to do. I don't even look forward to go to work anymore. I look forward to be done at work and come learn about machine learning. So at that point, I quit my job and just started doing Springboard full time. And it only took me about 3 months to 4 months. I didn't finish the course. I got a job first. So yeah, that was I think the curriculum guide you into the right direction, and it's in depth enough for you to kind of build on top or be able to do well in an interview or start a new job. So yeah.
So I frequently advise students to front load the course material, right? So if you have a fixed amount of time to get through the course, start working through the course material early so that later you can focus more on job search once you can speak the language and you know what you want to do, right? Because it's a very broad field. a lot of people are calling a lot of different jobs data science. Basically anything that's touching data can probably be construed as data science in some form. So
Ryan, shame on you.
what's that?
So we really specifically advise students to do the course in order and to complete the career elements kind of as they come through the curriculum. And the reason is two things. One, it actually gives you a bit of a break from some of the technical materials. So sometimes students find that just kind of exhausting to hammer through a lot of the technical material, and focusing for a day on your LinkedIn profile could be a nice way to, or think about your job search strategy, or why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? Kind of connecting in with that purpose around the course can really help you overcome some of those challenges. Also, it makes your job search a lot less daunting later to start on this stuff early. So to think a little bit about what do you want to do, and how are you going to start your networking? How can you use your networking to get some of your questions about data science answered along the way as you do the course? That will all really help set you up for career success later, because the biggest area that we see students burn out is on their job search. Job search is exhausting. It's hard work. And we don't want students to just kind of do that all in one chunk later, because you will burn yourself out. It's hard. So doing a little bit of that all along the way and getting started on that kind of as you go through the course actually is one way to kind of help make sure that you're moving forward and making good progress and getting the time you need to focus on both sides. So I have a different strategy to recommend there, but I'll respect to you, Ryan.
Yeah, that sounds more manageable.
Yeah, I mean, different people have different strategies, but I like from my experience, specifically, I thought, like starting your career aspect like very early on really helped, because I feel like networking doesn't take just 1 or 2 days, or, like knowing what to put on your LinkedIn or be able to optimize your LinkedIn doesn't take just 1 or 2 days. Like you actually have to, like go through a process, like, okay, go through a bunch of job like posting, and then like notice the keywords that been using a lot, and like one by one you starting adding that into your LinkedIn, and just like periodically improving your profile, or like making more contacts one by one, meeting new people, day after other. So yeah, I think that was very helpful.
I would definitely agree. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
I would definitely agree to start networking early, because that's something where you can learn how to use the language and how people talk about data before you need to have the technical chops to be able to start driving those conversations yourself. And finding mentorship like that is powerful.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm getting so many questions. I'm trying to organize them all as we go. I think one other question is a little bit more about kind of what elements, I know we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but like what elements of the Springboard curriculum really stand out to you as kind of the biggest benefits that it can provide to a student? And I know that the question specifically was asking about competitors. We're not going to dive into like direct comparisons of ourselves versus other companies, just because it's not the Springboard way, but talking specifically to kind of what really sets this course apart in your minds.
For me, based on my experience, I would say the meeting with the mentor every week. I thought that was really important, because it's like not only does he help you to like understand your curriculum better, but also kind of guide you through what do you need to become successful, or what do you need to get a job. And like since he's the industry expert, he's been there, he's done that. So I think that was really, really helpful.
Yeah, I've noticed that giving students targeted feedback is really important. I can't compare to other courses just because I haven't worked with any of them, but I can compare to trying to self-study, and the the amount of material you need to cover when you have a mentor telling you like focused advice on what to work on next and where something has some code smell maybe, you need to go through at least an order of magnitude more information to be able to find that on your own. It takes a lot of reading, and it takes a lot of reading that maybe isn't as impactful as it could be.
For me, the career support that's offered at Springboard is quite different from the career support that's offered in other programs. And then again, then you'd be able to get doing this on your own. We do not. So for example, some boot camps will advise kind of a numbers-based approach. Like if you just submit 5,000 applications, at least one of those is going to turn into an interview. We go for a much more kind of guerrilla marketing process around building relationships. And the reason is that, and we teach you how to do that all along the way and really encourage that from starting with your mentor to other people at Springboard to developing your own relationships outside of Springboard. And the reason is that that helps your immediate job search, but it's also helpful for the rest of your career forever. So it's not just solving the immediate job need, it's really setting you up for success over the long haul. And providing that support really early in the curriculum all the way through to the end is also fairly unique. We, to my point earlier, we really want you to start that kind of early and give yourself lots and lots of time to be able to get it done. So I think that's something that sets us apart as well.
Awesome. I think one other question that we had gotten was a little bit more around, are there ways to do any real life data science work before you jump in and get a certificate? So maybe what people could be doing now to start to get their feet wet with data science.
Me personally, I didn't have any direct experience in data science at all. I did some work with like SQL queries, and that was just it. But yeah, everything I learned in data science started with Springboard.
Yeah. It's hard to get started on your own in my experience, if only because you need to have a question that needs data to get answered, and that happens more within organizations because they have a scale where you can't see your customers and makes it very easy to get disconnected. If you have questions that need answering with data, then that's a great place to start. There are a bunch of public data sets, and what I see often is folks look for the data and then try to get questions that they can answer with the data, which is kind of a backwards way to do data science. Usually, well, in a successful data science program, you'll start with questions and then you'll figure out what data you need to support that question. So I've seen some folks try to work with open data science meetups or like local municipal data or civic data. And that's great because you can meet people who usually have questions with data. So that's a way to start. I haven't seen that very much in the industry though. A lot of times those meetups take the form of, we have this data. Can you make a problem from it?
One thing that I sometimes advise students to do is to start with your current job. And it's going to depend a lot on what you're doing currently. But if you have any access to data as part of your existing professional path or as a student, for example, and your company is trying to solve challenges or problems, or there are questions that are coming up in your job, what can you do data science on yourself? Can you do data science on the job that you're currently working in? Even if it's just some basic analytics is always a good place to just kind of test out your skills and interests.
Definitely. One other question that we got is around what are some unconventional channels to pursue that may lead to jobs? So I know you talked a little bit about networking, but I don't know if anything else comes to mind.
Yeah. So relationship building is super, 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 super important. And there are lots of different ways to do that and ways to build those relationships in conventional and unconventional ways. Looking for experience. So we have a fairly good number of students who actually leverage to their own job to create a data science job within a company, for example. So instead of applying to something that's posted, they may pitch to their boss or someone else in the company that a data science role is needed and that they're the right person to do that. So that can be a good strategy. Doing things like contractor project-based work can turn into job opportunities as well, and can be a great way to get experience and to show your value. And then meetups, Kaggle competitions, those have been known, hackathons have been known to lead to jobs as well. So we encourage students to kind of look at all of those. How can you not compete with the thousands of other people who are applying for an open position, but get at it a different way?
Cool. And one more directly job related. What is the prevalence of contract work versus full-time positions versus remote positions in the field of data science?
Yeah, we're still seeing a pretty big skew toward full-time permanent positions that are in person. That's still the most common type of data science position that exists. You will see some contract and project-based jobs. They're unusual in data science, largely because of the privacy and security requirements that most companies have around their data. So oftentimes to answer really deep corporate questions, there needs to be a level of trust there, and that usually requires being a full-time employee. We are seeing a small increase in remote-based data science positions, and usually for students who are interested in those, what I'll tell them is, apply for a job, whether it's listed as remote or not, in a company that you know to be relatively open-minded or to have a fairly flexible workplace culture. And then maybe as part of being invited to take that job, discuss the potential for remote work. You can also look at remote job boards, and you'll see some data science opportunities there, and those are increasing in number. But yeah, that's a quick overview of the options there.
I work remotely as a data scientist now. I've been doing it for a couple of years. It isn't, you're right, it's not super common. There are the jobs out there. It can be a little tricky, especially for junior analysts as well, because not having the direct mentorship can be a setback.
And a little harder for the company to take a risk on you being a relative junior person, right? Once you've got that track record, it's a little easier to go remote. I totally agree, Ryan.
Cool. And kind of, I think we're gonna wrap up here with, there's one final question that I will just answer really fast that I've been meaning to answer, is about our curriculum. And you guys can jump in here too to provide your kind of own experiences with the curriculum. But generally speaking, the way that we've created the curriculum is actually going out and talking to hiring managers and experts in the field and understanding what skills do you really need to know and learn to be successful as a data scientist. So there's a lot out there in the world of data science you could really never stop learning, but we figured out what the most important topics are. And then we also decided to not spin our wheels creating new content to teach you those things. There's a lot of really great online learning out there as well. So instead we see ourselves more as like a college professor who didn't necessarily write the textbook, but goes out and finds the best of the best to teach individual different concepts and ties it all together in a really nice narrative so that you're able to best comprehend the material. And to the point that I made earlier, that also intersperses in the career elements to just make sure that you're having a really pleasant learning path. So that's how we actually constructed the curriculum. I don't know if you guys want to speak to kind of your experiences with the curriculum or what you think of or how it's constructed, having kind of, especially Ryan and Lita, having touched it a little bit more, but that's a general overview from our end.
One thing that I haven't mentioned that I really liked about the curriculum is that there are two capstone projects that happened, I think maybe halfway, the first one happened halfway through the curriculum, and then the second one just right after you're done with the first one. I thought that was just very nicely laid out, and it just you learn enough material to be able to do some meaningful work, and as you work on your project, you learn even more and you build on top of what you already learned. And I thought that was very helpful. And I already mentioned the career portion of the curriculum. I thought that was very helpful.
Awesome. Ryan, anything else to add there?
No, I think you've covered most, but I don't have much to add there.
Cool, cool. All right. I think that we are all out of time. So I want to thank you, panelists, for answering all of these questions. And thank you, everybody who chose to jump on today. If you have any other questions about the course, feel free to reach out to me, Katie at springboard.com. I'm happy to answer those questions or to reach out to these experts as well as other people on the Springboard side to get you answers. Otherwise, again, the deadline to enroll for the September cohort is this coming Monday, August 20th. And you feel free to reach out to me about any questions. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. And thank you again, panelists, for joining us.
Thank you so much.